All right. Welcome to today's call. How you doing? What's up, Kendra? What's up,
Hey, good
Kyle?
morning.
Morning. Good morning. All right. Let me take a look here. I think, yeah, I'm already recording. Kendra, you mind letting folks in?
Sure thing.
Thank you. I think Alex is in the waiting room. You can let him in too.
Okay.
Today, he gets the pass today. How's everybody doing?
Wondermus.
Hey, hey. What's up, Scott?
Hey, what's happening?
Just getting after it, man. Um, Good to see you guys. What's up, Alex?
Hey, man.
Hey, hey. Um, Alex, you had sent the email about YouTube, actually about Facebook, and which got me to thinking, similar to how you do on your ABN channel, I should just start posting these to our YouTube channel, right? I mean, so
Oh,
people don't
that'd
have
be
to have an
great.
account.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, dude, there's just so much like social media things to keep up with, right? And I know you've got a pretty solid team, um, you work with to do that, but yeah, I don't know why I haven't like had that thought. Um,
YouTube's easy.
right, you just upload.
I know. In fact, I'm on YouTube Premiere actually, because Premiere rocks. I mean, it's just, I'm not endorsing it. I'm just telling you that for me, I love being on Premiere. A lot, there are advantages, certainly, NFL, NFL is, during football season, but yeah, man, I love YouTube. In fact, I think YouTube is the #1 search engine now, I believe.
Hmm.
But something like that. But there's a lot of value from it.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so we'll start doing that. And just the context for anyone that's wondering why we're talking about YouTube. So we always point everyone, hey, go get your resources, go get, your replays of trainings, of videos, articles, and files and things like that we share. We generally share them in a couple of areas in either the university and or in their Facebook group, which is a private group. And really the idea there was just to keep it out, not necessarily to keep it away from people, but it was really to keep it out of any additional unnecessary attention that we might not need, right? I mean, we're a close-knit group, and we want to share these resources with you. But the truth of the matter is that if you have an interest in estate planning for your clients, the resources that we share, they should be shared with everyone, right? Including some of the things we talk about in these trainings. And so, I'll look to keep putting everything in the Facebook group, but also now, hey, you know what? Why don't we look at least having the videos, like the replays and such, in a YouTube channel, right? And so we'll do that. We'll be working on, I'll be working on that with the team over the next week, and I'll see if I can even kind of backfill a lot of the trainings there as well, right? So, if you're not a Facebook user, you won't be missing out, right? And so, but even, everyone should have a Facebook account, literally just to be able to go and access, um, some of the gold that you can find in the right groups, right? I'm not saying you can get just as lost in a Facebook scroll as you can in a YouTube scroll. So, but I do think that YouTube, like Alex mentioned, and people might come across our information, um, and even kind of want to become part of the team when they didn't know they were looking for us. So we'll be doing that. I just had an email from one of our agents. I don't know why it came to my personal email, but it did. And it just said, and it's something that I want to that can come up with anyone, right? Especially if you're helping your family members with an estate plan. Kyle, you'd be interested in hearing this. I think it's somebody you might have worked with, but it says, would you please direct me as to how to add my mom's home into her trust with EP Docs, right? And so that's simple. You have an estate plan with EP documents. You go in, you log in, you go to the trust funding kit, you click on real estate, and it walks you through what you need to do with the real estate property, right? And so that, and we actually just did a training on that. What was it, 2 weeks ago, Kyle? Walking through DeedWorks. Okay. Yeah, if you have an estate plan, if your mom has an estate plan and her trust, I'm sorry, her home, her property is not in that, is not retitled to that trust, it's gonna have to go through probate, right? So let's help her avoid that. But again, real simple. You log into your account and do that. Speaking of logging in, and making sure you take care of your account. Again, if you've and I've gotten emails over this, and I know that it was a long weekend with President's Day yesterday and banks were closed. But last week obviously was, the 10th was when anyone that, had had a client that they closed within the month of January, you should have gotten paid on the 10th. If you had updated your payment format, which is the new format, we're not using Stripe anymore. We're using Payworks. And it's basically all they're doing is same thing. Anytime you're setting up getting paid 1099, they collect that information, they get your banking information so that they know they can pay you out and then send you a 1099 at the end of the year, right? So it's a W-9 form. You got to fill all that out online. However, if you hadn't had that updated and you've updated since, or there was an error in what you had put in, you can go in and edit that. I believe that those had rerun over the weekend, and so those should be hitting today, unless there's some issue or hold up with your bank. But those should be hitting today. I know there was a few that had asked me about that. So, and again, all you're doing is, you're just going right online, logging into your account, and it'll either be a pop-up if you haven't set it up yet and you've got a client that that you've recently had. Make sure you set that up. It just says enroll now. Or if you've already enrolled and again there was an issue with the information, right? Maybe you transposed your banking account information wrong or anything like that, or you need to just update it because now you have a new LLC entity or what have you. You would just click on my account and then go down to Payworks. You'll see it there, and just edit your information. Okay. Anyone? Just written this down because this morning I was driving in to the office. I'm listening to a really good book. If do me a favor, drop in the chat if you're reading or listening to any really good books on audio. I want to hear what you guys are listening to. Two kind of books I'm listening to, reading. One I'm reading and listening to. The other one I'm only listening to, and that's Blue Ocean Strategy. That's this one here, by W. Chan Kim. And I'm not going to pretend to know how to say the second author's name. And I just love that book. It's really talking about, hey, how do we separate our business and what it is that we offer, our service offering, and take it out of like the muddy, blood infested, shark infested waters of all the competition, which was the old way of thinking. Like you had to compete. And how do I find a blue ocean, right, where it's not filled with sharks, where I can actually I don't have to worry about compete. I can actually just bring a service of value, and really create my own kind of, people say a new pond to fish in. Well, instead of a pond, how about an ocean, and let's make it a blue ocean, right? And so that's a great one. And I'm listening to that one. And then also another one. Alex, I don't know if you've heard of this one. This one's actually kind of new on my radar, but apparently it's been around for a bit because there's multiple versions of this book. And it's called Exactly What to Say by Phil Jones. You familiar with that one?
No, I've never heard of it.
It's really cool. I mean, it talks a little bit about it. It doesn't necessarily refer it to as NLP, but it just talks about using your languaging in a way that can make all the difference when you're when you're speaking with clients. And so, it's cool. Like if you just look at some of these the chapters are basically broken down by like the words to use, right? So I'm not sure if this is for you, Alex, but right. And it's just positioning, right? Hey, Alex, are you open-minded? Right. And what they've done is over research, they've most people, like 99% of people will say that they're open-minded.
Yeah.
Right. So when you position it like that, whatever you're about to share, they kind of have to listen to it, right? um,
Yeah.
how would you feel if, right? Or just imagine. So all these, and it's really cool, like kind of the research and the history behind it, and it gives really good examples. And so if you're in sales or leadership and influence, it's a great one. I'm really enjoying it, taking good notes on it and using them in my.
What's the name of that again, Pablo?
That's called Exactly What to Say
Thank you.
by Phil Jones. And there's multiple. There's actually another version I was considering getting, but I wanted to get the main one first, which is Exactly What to Say as a Real Estate Agent. Right. So again, in that same context of conversation as advisors. So just really cool. I don't know if anyone dropped any other books or anything that you're listening to or reading. But those are just two that I'm reading. Alex, you reading anything currently?
I'm reading The One Thing.
Oh yeah. That's a yellow cover. I haven't read that. I haven't seen that.
Oh, really? Yeah, this is a real good one. Gary Keller and Jay.
Gary Keller, yeah.
Yeah, Gary Keller. Um,
Hmm.
like I'm really interested in exactly what to say because I'm all about NLP. Like I am an NLP practitioner. I didn't go through the 2-week course, to be a practitioner, a master practitioner, but I teach NLP sales techniques. I try not to call it NLP only because people go down the rabbit hole of, wanting to do NLP, and NLP is a massive, massive subject area that they go down a rabbit hole, and it's like they never come out of it. They want to become master practitioners. Like, no, don't do that. But so I'm really interested in this book, Exactly What to Say. It sounds like a kind of an NLP style book. So,
well, you know me, I'd call it NLP for dummies.
yeah.
So it's perfect
Well,
for me.
and that's why I think I love the books that synthesize it down to sales, not all the other things like treating PTSD or quitting smoking. I mean, NLP can be used for so many things, but narrowing it down to being effective in sales and creating, bond and rapport with a client, to influence clients, doing leading and pacing, and all these really cool things. VAC, right? Visual, auditory, kinesthetic, which is a little bit about kind of what you're saying about this book. Getting into people's heads without letting them know you're getting into their heads. NLP is super. I've made millions, literally millions, as a result of using the techniques.
Wow. Yeah. So there you go. Again, it is a language, right? We don't have to learn the whole language. We just have to learn to use the parts that are going to help us in our business. And so, yeah, that's good. What else? So I guess one of the things I'd written down here was I want to give everyone a challenge. And I know it's weird to maybe have a challenge at the beginning of a call versus at the end. But as I was going through and reading some of these and some of these books and the topics that are covered week after week, I wanted you to start to challenge yourself, to start thinking big, on the possibilities here with EP documents. I've had some really good conversations with some seasoned licensees and some new folks. And, I want you to start thinking big for this year. I mean, look at it. It's almost March, right? And so, I know in the past we've had people talk about doing events, right, to attract business. And the event might be big, right? You might be going to like a big street fair, or you might be going to a big expo, and maybe you're a vendor there, right? A sponsor there. But I want you to think big, right? So the event might be big, but are the relationships big? Right? Are the relationships big? Like when you look at when you look at an oak tree, or you look at a sequoia, right? And how tall they've grown, how wide they've, the trunk of a tree like that. That's a big tree, but you got to think of the roots that are under it are just as large, right? You've ever seen the picture of the tree and the root, right? And it almost looks like a mirror image as far as the impact of that. And so my point is I want you to think big, not of big events, not of the big thing, but I want you to think of the big relationships that you have. And let me just give you a couple of examples. So I've had some conversations this past week of big thinking, like business building opportunities, and not just, and it wasn't just thinking, it was people that are actually doing it. That's why I'm excited for these folks that are joining. One of them was a commercial real estate expert. I think he's actually on the call. Sam, I had a great conversation with Samuel, and his idea was, he wants to take his expertise of being in this conversation of estate plan, real estate, estate planning, tax planning, and really just bringing the estate planning conversation to the forefront, and then partnering with people that are already in that world, like insurance advisors, right? And so, Samuel, I'll share. Actually, if you're on and you wouldn't mind sharing just the idea of, again, this Thursday meeting that you're doing. If you don't mind, maybe just sharing a couple minutes of what you're doing there.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Hey, but yes, loud and clear.
Good. Good. Sorry, I'm at a Panera right now, but yeah. So my meeting is setting up an ecosystem, a synergy with people that we could all help, each other with services. My background in commercial real estate, I know that I need support from people that are in insurance, for example, they insured homes, or they do loan insurance. Also in areas of life insurance too, where they have referrals that they could send me to their clients that need to have estate planning and trusts set up. And at that point in time, I offer another opportunity to them, like, hey, I also do the trusts. I see that you have some clients, and let's partner up. And that's what happened with me, is that in being consistent every Thursday, going to the real estate association meetings, that I could actually meet several people and have a quick introduction to myself and talk about estate planning, talk about the benefits of having it, and just being there to have strategic partnerships and have meetings with them and their groups too. So, launching off into the other worlds, other networking groups that people could, Rotary clubs, anybody that actually has a group of people that I can connect with.
Awesome.
And yeah, just taking it there. I moved here about 6 months ago, and that's all I've been doing, is meeting people and opening more doors. So
That's great, Samuel. And hey, and I'm just curious, how big is the we talk about the big relationships when you partnered up with this other advisor to share your information. What kind of audience, like what size audience are we talking about?
this is over 100 people, and the partnership that I have with Northwest Mutual insurance team is that we also have other groups in the company that they need estate planners within their own groups too.
Okay.
other agents, and they also have events at clubs with other agents. Be part of it.
So I'm sorry, I'm having just a little bit hard time hearing you, Samuel. So,
Okay.
but let me, I'll round out those thoughts for you because again, we had the conversation. I'd put you on the spot. But the idea is, listen, he's getting in front of 100 real estate professionals on a weekly basis with someone else and sharing the opportunity of why everyone needs an estate plan, right? And and so again, that's thinking big. I had another conversation with um, a business coach, right? A coach and consultant who's serving small businesses in her area, and she's working on coaching, consulting them. And she came across our information from, I think, one of our licensees and wanted to offer this, wanted to offer estate plans to her clients. So we reached out. We had a good conversation. I said, if you're a business coach, and you're not talking about having some kind of an estate plan, and at least having a referral partner for that, and she was all for it, right? She was all for it, and even as a non-practicing attorney, which is what her background was, she immediately saw the impact on this, right? And so that was another example of that. Another one, and a third one, last one I'll share, um, is, for many of you, right, whether you were in a tax service or insurance service, real estate service, tax credit, right? The ERTC credits, which have kind of gone essentially by the wayside. Well, what was another opportunity? I had a really good in-depth conversation, and someone who was bringing an opportunity to estate plan documents that said, hey, you know what? I'm going to go back and talk to my clients from ERTC, which are these companies that had 10, 20, 40, 50 plus employees, and bring in the opportunity of, hey, estate planning is something that you should consider offering to your employees. Right. And so, again, start thinking big, and it really doesn't start with how big is the room, although, hey, it is nice to know, hey, there's going to be 100 real estate agents in the room, or that there's going to be, 100 employees at but it's the relationship, right? What's the big relationship that you have? And so start to look at those opportunities. And I just wanted to kind of share that when we're thinking about, what are some of the blue ocean strategies? Guys, you already have the oceans at your fingertips, right? You already have those relationships at your fingertips. So, Alex, anything you wanted to add on that, or have you had any conversations like that as of late?
As of late, I think it's like what Jeff has always taught, Jeff Molman, cast a wide and talking about networking. So like we talked about it last week, networking and letting people know what you're doing. If you let people know what you're doing, it always brings about an opportunity to having a conversation, no matter where you are, what you're doing. Let people know what you're doing. Just be more open. And sometimes what we've seen actually when I get agents started in life insurance, is, hey, let people know what you're doing. What's amazing is they'll put on Facebook, hey, just want to let everyone know that I recently got my license. I have access to 55 insurance carriers. If you ever thought about, getting a life insurance policy, why don't you give me a crack to giving you a quote? Just something simple. You're not selling hard, you're just announcing. It's more of an announcement type thing. And it's amazing. I mean, you will get, like, agents have done it, have gotten policies written on people that, were at the right place, right time. And I think that's kind of really what, kind of what we're talking about here. Take advantage of people being at the right place, right time when you're letting them know. It's like, why hold your light under a bushel, right? Why not let it shine? So.
Love that. Actually, it's funny that the what I do post, I recently saw, like, I don't know if it just, how the algorithm works. I recently saw somebody post that, and I mean, and it got like hundreds of responses from this guy's community. And then I saw other people doing the same thing, and I'm like, I should do it too. But it was like, it's funny how many, it literally started with something like, it's funny how many people don't know what I do.
Yeah.
And so for those of you that are curious, and I also wanted to, kind of clarify, because I do a little bit of a few different things, and there's a reason why. So here you go. And then like kind of breaks it down. And anyone that's interested in anything they see in those first few things is going to continue reading, right? If they don't care, then they're just going to keep scrolling, no big deal. But you're going to capture that attention. And so that's a small thing that can have a big impact, right? So if I find that, I'm actually going to probably just copy and paste and just be like, hey, here's an example of that, of what to do, if you want to kind of announce to the world, right? And it's an announcement. It's not a sales pitch. It's here's what I do. In case you didn't know, here I am, right? And then obviously you don't even have to say, get in touch with me. Here's my phone. Let people respond. Let people send you a message. They can track you down, right? So anyway, I think those are all great ways, to again start thinking big. I wanted to challenge you, and if you want to have conversation with me and or Alex, send us an email, right? Just send an email to info@epdocuments.com. Let's get on my calendar. Let's have a conversation, and let's build your business big. We're almost done with Q1 of 2024 already. All right, so I want to bring on our concierge, friend Kyle Williams. We were having a conversation yesterday, of just some questions that we've done this before, where we kind of covered, hey, here are questions that we get from licensees, right? And some of the questions that we were talking about yesterday, I think Kendra had brought them up, and they were either concerns of hers for her clients or licensees that she was working with, and they weren't really concerns. These are actually like really valid points and good questions. And so one of them, and if you might have seen in, kind of our outreach, was, hey, we want to talk about, special needs subtrusts, and then also AB trusts, right? And if they're right for blended families. And so the reason we want to talk about these things is because obviously they're coming up, but they're also things that are good to keep top of mind when you're having conversations with people, and that they're either in a special needs family situation or disability situation, or people that have blended families. And so let's jump into that. Kyle, I want to spotlight you here.
Okay.
Spotlight myself, so it's me and you side by side, brother. I got your back.
All right.
And but let's talk about, first of all, let's talk about why we're covering this, right? Like, why is it important that we know the importance of a subtrust, a specialty needs subtrust? Like, why would that even be a factor, right? So let's start there, and then we can kind of start to pull back some of the layers of, right, the different types of disability and kind of, functional versus occupational, all those different things. But I think it's important to start with, hey, why is this even important? Like, why, if I'm a family, a father or a mother of a special needs child, why should I even care about a trust in the first place that's specific to that child?
Yeah. So, this answer is going to go beyond the standard answer of why you need a trust. We cover that stuff on a regular basis, but when it comes to a special needs child, the reason that you want to get a subtrust for them is so that when the day comes that family can no longer provide care, then they're going to transition to government funded care, which basically is Medicaid. That's pretty much how most states run it. But with Medicaid, you have to financially qualify to be in that program and have the government pay for it. So if you have this subtrust, it gives you the ability to have any inheritance they're going to receive go into that subtrust. So they'll have access to it through their trustee, but it's never in their name. Therefore, the state cannot force them to self-pay for care until they exhaust all that money. So that's why you want to put a special needs subtrust together, is to protect that child. Does that make sense?
100%. so that they are not losing these benefits, right? These state or
Yeah.
federal funds.
Yeah,
benefit.
because I mean, it's, I mean, your Medicaid rules are going to vary. I mean, I know what the federal levels are, but there's also state levels. But basically, Medicaid is for those that are in poverty. Typically, the general rule is 138% of the federal poverty level or below. And I mean, if you're talking a single individual, I mean, again, it's going to vary by state, but they're only allowed to have like $1,200 a month in income. They're only allowed to have roughly like $1,500 in asset value outside of a home or a vehicle to their name. Like they can't have a checking account with $2,000 in it. The state will make them self-pay down to that $1,500 level. So if you want to leave that child anything and you don't want the state to force them to pay for it, you've got to figure out a way to put that stuff somewhere else. And that's what the special needs subtrust does. It gives you a place to put their inheritance so their name's not directly on it. So that way they can have access to it, but the state can't take it.
Now, Kyle, can this be set up if I have a child that's a minor or an adult or both that has specialty needs?
Yep. Yeah, because and what this is, I will pull this up real quick. I will pull up the demo trust so I can show everybody where we put this in. Give me a minute. I'll pull it up here.
And something came up while you're pulling that up. And actually it was for both topics that we're going to cover. It was that, hey, does this make it complex? Well,
no.
The truth is that there's some complexities on additional steps that the families have to go through. But with regards to creating the trust, setting up the plan, going through epdocuments.com, through to set up a client with their estate plan and a specialty needs subtrust, it is no more complex than what you're already doing for a family that does not have a specialty needs, right? So I just want to make that perfectly clear. Like we're talking about all these things, Kyle's going through some of these numbers. You're not required to know these things, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to know what happens on the back end. As long as you're putting it in place, it's going to help that idea of A, avoiding probate, and then B, also that child, whether adult or minor, to be able to keep those benefits, not lose those benefits, because now all of a sudden they have a lump sum of cash that they inherited from a trust, right?
Yep. So now, I'm right here in the demo software. So when you go to click this button to add child, it pulls this up, and this question is always here: adult disabled. That means adult disabled or special needs child. It doesn't matter how old they are. If they are your child or you are their legal guardian, then all you have to do is just select that box yes, fill everything out, then click submit, and that's all you have to do. That's it. The system, by checking that box yes, the system will automatically know it needs to create the documents for that special needs subtrust. So this is not something incredibly complicated on your end. All you have to do is check that button yes, and the system will do the rest for you. So yeah, I love that feature. It is so simplistic. It is so easy to do. And I mean, even you go down a couple of additional tabs when you add in additional people or organizations, you still have to check that same button. I mean, you have to check it all the time, but yeah, if they have a special needs child, just check yes on the button and you're good to go.
Now, I wanted to, it was interesting. The reason this even came up in conversation was, I believe one of Kendra's clients had selected that their child had a disability. But that wasn't the disability that would have qualified as a specialty needs or special needs child.
Yeah.
Right. So let's touch on that a little bit, because this is really important, right? I don't want to make that mistake. And we want to be clear on what does that mean, disability?
Yeah. So really kind of the simplest way we can boil it down when it comes to type of disability is it a functional disability or an occupational disability? Because like in Kendra's case, this is a guy that his son is a veteran. He is like, if I remember right, Kendra, I think he's like 80 or 90% disabled for depression
Right.
and anxiety.
Yes.
Which, okay, for the VA's definition or for Social Security disability, that could be enough to qualify as disabled. For the purposes of this, he's not functionally disabled. I mean, physically, the guy can do anything. You know, I mean, he can pay bills. He can, you know, take a shower. He can, you know, basically do everything an adult should be able to do, except hold a job due to his depression and anxiety. So that would not be an example of checking yes on a disability. Now, if you had, let's say they had a child that was involved in a car accident and suffered a major brain injury, and they require daily care just to perform the activities of daily living, yes, that's disabled. I was actually just having a conversation with somebody about autism. And I was like, well, it really depends on where they are on the spectrum. I mean, there many folks with autism can be functional adults. They can hold down jobs. They can live a normal life. They're just living it through a little different lens. But there are some forms of autism that are debilitating. So that's kind of where the line gets drawn. I mean, if you have a child with Down syndrome that will never be able to be self-reliant, that's really the big question there. Are they going to be able to be self-reliant as an adult? So yeah, there are different types of disabilities out there. And if you have questions, feel free to get a hold of us. Feel free to get a hold of me or Kendra or Pablo or Alex. I mean, we can kind of help you figure that stuff out, but not all disabilities are the same.
Very good. Thanks for clarifying that. And by the way, again, like Kyle said, if you're not sure, right? But I think the point is that when it asked if there was a disabled child, it means in regards to the special needs, right? And do we need a special needs subtrust? So again, a Social Security disability or VA disability, that's occupational, not the same as a special needs disability.
Yeah, because well, I mean, like when I was talking with this about Kendra, I mean, I've got a cousin of mine that's disabled through the VA for it's depression, anxiety, and a shoulder and a knee injury. But him and I go golfing on a regular basis when the weather's nice in Ohio, so he would not meet that definition of a functional disability.
Kyle, I think Robert asked a good question there. So why don't we talk about that? The question is, who is the person or entity that provides or distributes assets to the special needs individual once the parents are gone, right? That's exactly what putting this into the special needs subtrust is important, right?
Yep. That would be the trustee. Whoever you choose as your successor trustee will be the trustee of that special needs trust. So they would be the one that determines if that special needs child gets money. And the definition for qualifying for need is called HEMS. It's HEMS, Health, Education, Maintenance, and Support. And the key one there is support, because health, education, and maintenance, those are fairly straightforward, but support can really, it's kind of a broad term because it can be for all kinds of different things. But at the end of the day, it's up to your chosen trustee what qualifies as support and what they can have access to money for. So, you know, in that situation, you do want to be very conscious about who you're going to appoint that trustee, but generally, whoever you're going to appoint as a trustee is probably the person in a younger generation that you trust the most. So typically generally that's not going to change a whole lot, hopefully. But yeah, the trustee would be in charge of that. The short answer.
Yeah. So
let me
again,
give an example. Like, if a disabled child wanted to go, if you want to send them on a trip to go visit family and for Christmas, that will not be covered by their government support. like it's very limited
Yep.
what the government money can pay for, and it's not going to be, it's really hardly anything beyond just subsistence living. So when talking to special needs families, you have to emphasize to them, they're very limited in what they can spend that government money on. So anything else beyond that, all the comforts we take for granted has to be provided for by this trust, which, oh, by the way, should be an IUL, second to die, preferably. Anyway,
We'll get to that in a minute, Alex.
okay, good.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kyle, let's jump into that. So benefits, right?
Yep.
So how does then I've got a special needs child. I want to make sure that that child is going to get their fair share of my estate when I pass away, but I also have two other children.
Yep.
Right. And those two other children are not specialty needs. So there's no real hindrance of them getting their portion of the trust or my estate.
Yeah.
What happens to my other child? And I want to make sure he gets his fair share.
Yep. And I'm really glad we're talking about this, Pablo, because this really does bring up in a special needs situation. This only serves to highlight why they need to do this kind of a trust, because it also protects the other children. Because what we have typically worked with our clients to do, I'm not saying you have to do it this way, this is how we've done it, and it works really well, is we say, okay, like in this example, you've got 3 kids. So what I would tell them to do, relatively, is take your estate, split it between the 2 non-special needs kids, because you're going to have a whole variety of different assets. You're going to have houses and vehicles and all this kind of stuff. But for the special needs child, get a life insurance policy that is going to be equal value to the other 2 kids' half of the estate, and then name that subtrust the beneficiary. Because that special needs child, they're not really going to be able to work in their own self-interest when it comes to settling the estate and dividing everything up. So just in the interest of simplicity, just get a life insurance policy. And it's going to vary on what you do. I mean, Alex referenced this, a second to die indexed universal life. A lot of times they're called survivorship IUL. That's where you're insuring mom and dad, and whoever dies second, then it's going to pay out. Typically with those, only one of the spouses has to be insurable, not both of them. But you get that second to die IUL, make the subtrust the beneficiary. So when they pass away, that lump sum goes straight into that trust for the special needs child, and the other 2 non-special needs children can settle the rest of the estate. And then in the event that you're years down the road and the value of your estate has grown since you originally started this, guess what? They can just get another life insurance policy. They're life insurance policies. You're allowed to own more than one. So, if you get 20 years down the road and they're like, hey, the value of our estate has doubled. Okay, great. Well, let's just get another life insurance policy and make the subtrust the beneficiary there. So, that is, in our experience, that is a very clean and very effective way to work with these special needs families. And then you have a very clear separation of who gets what.
Yeah.
And another thing to keep in mind, and this is a little bit of a selling point for people with a special needs child, is if their estate goes into probate, they don't do a trust, hypothetically, mom and dad pass away, the estate goes into probate, that special needs child has to go to state-funded care. Well, guess what? The state knows they're going to have to self-pay. They're going to get a chunk of money. So the state can actually lay a claim to the entire estate to pay for it. And then everything doesn't get divided until after probate's over. So let's say, hypothetically, I'm just throwing some numbers out here. Let's say their estate's worth $1 million. But during the time that estate is in probate, that special needs child has racked up a $100,000 bill with the state for their care. The state takes $100,000 off of the estate before it gets split up between the kids. I hope I explained that well enough, but not doing the trust can negatively hurt your other kids when it comes to their inheritance as well. Does that, I hope I didn't muddy the waters too much. I tried to explain that fairly simply, but yeah, that only highlights the need of why special needs families need to be looking at doing a trust.
No, I think thank you for sharing that, and also for I hope you know, for those of you that are in financial services, insurance services, you know, take heed to that opportunity, to be able to help and provide that service, not just on the estate planning side, but even on the insurance side. Alex, was that pretty much what you were talking about? To make
Oh
sure
yeah,
that,
for sure.
that we covered. Okay.
In fact, one of the advantages of that particular survivorship IUL is that even if the other spouse is uninsurable, they can be put on that policy because it'll be underwritten on the healthy spouse. But here's kind of the interesting thing about that particular product through Columbus Life is that if the healthy spouse passes away, then the surviving spouse who's got all the health issues can actually qualify for living benefits. So that's sort of that kind of crazy opportunity. You know, certainly statistically, the sick spouse is probably going to die first, but should the healthy one die, then the sick spouse has access to all the living benefits of that policy. So it's kind of a nice spin. So that, from an estate planning perspective, which Columbus Life is probably the only company that is really into the estate planning space, you know, that product is like a really great estate planning product.
Yep.
Time out, Alex. So not to get on a tangent on this, because as a type 1 diabetic and my wife who's healthy and younger and female, because I've actually been turned down for living benefits through some like policies where they're like, we're willing to give you the life insurance,
Yeah,
but take away the living benefits. I'm
Yeah.
like, well, that's really what I wanted it for. You're telling me that somebody like me would qualify for something like that?
if Adriana should pass away before you on that policy, that's
Okay.
when it kicks in, but not, you know, from Jump Street. You both,
Right.
you know, but
Okay.
it is your way, man, to, especially with a condition like type 1 diabetes, which is manageable, you know, it becomes a really great option, particularly when you're probably more concerned about living benefits for the second person, the second survivor, you know.
Sure. Okay. Well, good to know. We'll get with that on another call.
Yeah.
So we've got about 12 minutes, and I do have a hard stop right at 12. So if we happen to go over, I'll just jump out. But I do want to talk about this second conversation, which really came up around the idea of, hey, is an A/B trust the way to go if you have a blended family? And again, I think this was another client that Kendra might have had, or working with the licensee who had this client. And it's a great question. It's a great question, right? And blended family, right? I mean, you know, I had a previous marriage, and the other spouse was in a previous marriage. Now they're married together, and so they're bringing assets, not just the children, right? We're talking about assets, specifically assets. We're bringing assets that were separate to that family, to that now current joint family. What happens with those? And really, there's kind of, Kyle, there's kind of two, from your experience in this, there's really kind of two conversations that are generally had when people are like, I want to do this with my assets, or there's other families that are like, no, we want to do this with our assets. And so can you maybe talk to what those decisions are? And then when they're choosing that, what does that mean with regards to the estate plan and the trust itself?
Okay. So yeah, now when it comes to the A/B trust, in my experience, that is more of a 1% scenario. It is very rare you're going to use an A/B trust. Originally, they were created, you know, I mean, we can look up the law if you really, really, really want to know. It goes back to 1982 about how they created the A/B trust because people were trying to use trust to avoid taxes. But so, I mean, it was originally created for very wealthy families, but that doesn't necessarily apply. I mean, you could have a family worth $20 million and a standard trust is just fine. But one of the situations we see for an AB trust is that blended family. Now, just because it's a blended family does not mean it's an AB trust, because there's a ton of blended families out there. It really comes down to, do both spouses come into the marriage with their own assets, and they absolutely want to keep their assets separate upon death? His assets go to his kids, her assets go to her kids, and there is no mix in between. They want that clear line of separation between, what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours. And you are going to run across some of these families, and fortunately, when you run across these, they've had those conversations privately among themselves. So if that's the case, then you want to go with an AB trust. Now, for us, it's very, very simple. I will share my screen again because I'm still logged into the demo. So it's just this one right here, AB trust. Rare, complex for large estates. That is still true, but I have used it a couple of times for these blended families. So all we have to do is check this box, check this button, and that's all we have to do. The system will handle the rest of the paperwork. You don't have to do anything else, at least in this stage. Now, when it does come to the next call on funding the trust, that's where you're going to have to get very specific about whose assets belong to who. Typically, in these cases, even though I've only done a few, most of them will keep separate accounts. Generally, in that scenario, if they're very adamant about keeping assets separate, they're probably not going to have a lot of joint accounts. She'll have her accounts and he'll have his, and that works perfectly fine. It actually makes your job easier. If there are any joint assets, basically what's going to happen with those is they'll just simply get split 50-50 between both sides, unless now, if we're talking about a situation where there's a home that's been in the family for 4 generations, but both spouses have their name on it, you can just gift that house as a bequest. So, let's say this house has been in her family for 4 generations. They agree it stays in her family for the 5th, and she has 2 kids. Well, you can just go down to the bequest section. I'll share my screen again here, so that way you can see what I'm doing. So yeah, you can just go down here to the bequest section, add a bequest, and it would be, from Jane to, I don't know, Mikey, whoever it is. The bequest would be real estate, and it would be half the property at 123 anywhere, wherever the address is. And then you would make a second bequest for the other child. Now, if it's a case where there's 2 kids are splitting it between, you would make each child, if Mikey's the primary, then you'd make Sally the contingent. And then when you do the second one, flip the order, but keep everything else the same, because bequests are always going to get honored first. So that way it guarantees that house will go to her kids because it's in her side of the family. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, AB trust is not something you're going to do a lot, but it does happen. And when it does, it's not a big deal. It's just a matter of having that conversation. Do you each have your own assets and you want them to keep separate? And, and essentially the way that it works is, after it's all set up, whoever passes away first becomes the A spouse. Their assets and their side of the trust becomes irrevocable upon their death. And their assets get locked in place. The surviving spouse cannot change anything with those assets. Then when the second spouse dies, that's the B spouse. That's the second half of the estate. So it is done with the purpose of locking those assets in so that the surviving spouse can't change any of it. That's why we do it.
And Kyle, typically the successor trustee on for each spouse will be a different person. Like typically they wouldn't put the other spouse as a successor trustee or secondary trustee to that AB trust, right?
Say that again?
Okay, so spouse A dies, they're typically not going to have the other spouse be the trustee of their irrevocable trust. It'll be someone else, right?
Well, I mean, they would be, because they're married, they're going to be each other's initial successor, but everything in their trust becomes locked in place upon their death. So even though their spouse is still the trustee, they can't change
They can't
anything.
change anything, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
Got it.
locked in place. It's irrevocable. They can't change it. They can't.
Yeah.
touch it. So I do see a comment here about what is a blended family, and that is just simply two people that were previously married with kids from other relationships that come together and get married. That's a blended family, or at least people, they don't necessarily have to be married. It's just anyone that brings children with someone else into the relationship is a blended family, because it's not the natural nuclear family of two people get married and have their own kids and it stays that way for life.
Yeah.
So,
And I would say this is also really important too, Kyle, because of, you know, the same reason it's a blended family. Maybe it was a previous divorce, right? And that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that a future divorce, is eliminated, right? Like that could actually be a possibility.
Yep.
So,
and
you know.
I mean, a couple of things I do want to toss out here. Number one, keep in mind, just because you're dealing with a blended family doesn't mean it's going to be an AB trust. Because when it is an AB or a blended family, one of the things I'm going to ask them fairly early on, because I have to know what type of trust we're setting up, is, hey, when it comes to your assets, do you want to keep them separate? You know, do yours go to your kids? Do hers go to her kids? Or is it all just one big melting pot? It's all together. The kids will split it up how we say. And if they go, no, they're all just joint assets, we're married, it's all together, then it's a standard trust. And that's what you're going to run into the majority of the time. Now, one of them might say, well, I've got a couple of things I want to go to certain people. Okay, great. Those are bequests. All good. All good to go.
Still a standard trust,
Yep.
just with a bequest. Mhm.
Yeah, still a standard trust. So I mean, AB trusts absolutely will be the exception. They are not the rule. But we really wanted to cover this so you kind of understand
Mhm.
more about what it is and where it's appropriate.
Very good. So we hope this has been helpful for you guys today. Kyle, I think you did a great job kind of walking through both of these scenarios, right? The blended family scenario, and then also the specialty needs scenario. Guys, if you're coming across these, and sometimes it's just fear, like we fear that we might have a family that we can help, but because of the fear that I might not have an answer to their tough question, or they have a special needs child and I don't know the ins and outs. What Kyle just explained today, this is what our concierge service can help with. Okay. So when you're dealing with the case like this, allow us to help you with it. That's what we're here for. Okay. The comp is a little bit different, of course, right? We've discussed that. But at the end of the day, you can get a satisfied client with the ease of mind and the peace of mind that that they have the right estate plan in place, right? They have these documents in place. So don't, please reach out to us if you're ever feeling like, hey, I'm going to need help with this one. That's what Kyle, that's what Kendra, that's what we're here for, to help you out with these. But please don't feel like you have to go at these on your own. Okay. Kyle, appreciate your time. Like I said, we have a hard stop. And again, if you guys, want to have any conversations with us, send us an email, info@epdocuments.com, and we'll get you on the appropriate schedule.
Real quick, Pablo, there was another comment about how an AB trust works in a community property state. The short answer there is every single community property state has their own documents built into the system, because they're all going to work just a tiny bit differently. But if you're in a community property state, the verbiage and the language inside the paperwork is already ready to go. You don't need to worry about that. And at the end of the day, they're doing an AB trust because they want a clear line of separation between his and hers. or hers and hers, or his and his, whatever you're running into. But yeah, so that's one of the
But
great
there-
things about the software is it's got all that stuff already ready to go.
But there has to be a
Right.
legal marriage before the
Yes.
spouse A and spouse B. They have to be legally married.
Yeah, that is a good point. Yeah, I have ran into that a couple of times. Like, well, we've lived together for like 20 years. I'm like, well, that's not legally. Like, are you legally married? No. Well, you got to get separate individual trusts. I'm sorry, those are the rules. Go get mad at the state.
What would Beyonce say? Put a ring on it.
Yeah. So it's, I have ran into that before, and I was like, yeah, hey, them's the rules. Like, I didn't make the rules. I just know how it works.
Good stuff. All right, guys. Hey, well, we'll see you next week. Thanks again, Kyle, and
Yep.
everyone for taking time out. We'll see you guys. Be well. Take care.
All right, bye.